Okay, I don't quite know what to say after that, because I've just come up from watching Orphan 55, and I don't think I can imagine an episode of television that I've hated just as much as I just hated that. This episode is the definition of a train wreck, and it comes so quite disappointingly after Spyfall was actually quite a promising start to the new series. But I just watched that and thought, how was this even approved to be made? And it's the first story, I think, where I think the idea where preachiness has come over story. And I haven't really thought that before, but about any of the stories previously. Like, I thought, obviously there's an element of it, but that's part of Doctor Who. But to this extent, it was over the top. And there is a certain scene right at the end which literally enthralls the entire episode. This episode is, in my opinion, the worst episode of Doctor Who new series, because I'll give Classic Who credit, it does have a lot of episodes, but it is a mixed bag, because obviously there were restraints of what they could do at the time. I'm sure if a lot of Classic Who episodes were made now, they'd be made a lot better. But this is actually shockingly bad. It's shockingly bad. It is so bad that I just don't really know what to say about it. I don't know how to break it down, because the companions, which I'd usually give a segment each, get nothing to do, except maybe Ryan. Ryan gets a little bit to do. He has a little subplot with this other girl, Bella, who wants to blow up the Tranquility Spa because her mother left her to build it and left her father to die, and it's a tragic backstory. But they obviously, she's the daughter of Kane. Bella and Kane are the mother and the daughter. None of the guest cast here, none of them impressed me. It was quite, I noticed the child, the guy from the In-Betweeners, that guy's child was from His Dark Materials. I thought his performance was grading in His Dark Materials, but my goodness me, is awful in this episode. He doesn't really get anything to do. This is another thing. This episode is just so overcrowded. There's just so many characters, but there's nothing going on. There's nothing to sort of compensate the fact that there's so many episodes. So many characters. Because you've got the old couple that I can't remember the name. I mean, it's Benny and something, but I can't remember their names. And there's the guy from engineering. There's another Fox weird lady, which I just went on and thought, hang on, I thought this series so far there's been an improvement on special effects. Then why on earth is that there? That creature. I mean, if you're going to just put some makeup on her face and just give her a fluffy tail, you might as well have just cast an actress to just play a character, because it just looks so stupid and such like a waste of time in a makeup chair. I was just wondering why you even bothered, because it looked ridiculous. This entire episode is just ridiculous that it even got made, which is kind of disappointing, because as Ed Heim goes, I quite like him as a writer. I thought It Takes You Away was one of the highlights of series 11 and one of the better episodes from that season, but this is just awful. I just don't know what to say, because it's just that bad. But I'm going to try and break this down in some way, because I don't really know what else I can say about this story, because there's more political message in this story than there is story. But you're thrown right into the adventure. At the start, I was thinking there's a bit missing of this episode. I was like, this is a bit, what's going on? I was all a bit confused, and there's this giant tentacle in the TARDIS, and then all of a sudden Graham is with these coupons and he's building a teleport thing, and it just didn't really make sense to me. And then they get to Tranquility Spa. There's like a very brief moment of calm, and then suddenly it all goes to hell. It's pretty, it just feels like there's no real reason for the plot to exist, really. It's just we're on a planet. There's a giant dome with a Tranquility Spa thing, and this is apparently evil, and it's on a planet that's all been orphaned or something. And it turns out, shock horror, that this planet is is Earth, which is a massive rip-off of the episode of Doctor Who that came from the 80s called it's from Trial of a Time Lord. It's the opening segment of Trial of a Time Lord, where it's revealed that the planet that they're on, that we think is Ravalox, is actually Earth. And I'm just wondering, is this before that? Is that after that? I mean, either they didn't watch that episode and therefore didn't think it mattered, or they just didn't think about it, both of which is really bad writing. I mean, this episode just doesn't take any care about the fact that it's just stealing from other episodes. It feels incredibly useless as an episode. It's not even memorable, really. I think the thing that people will remember from this episode is I think a lot of people are going to complain about it, because at the end there is literally Jodie Whittaker's best preach. And I have to give it to her, it is a very well acted scene. She does give a good performance. But it is just pointing at the viewer and saying the fact that and it's quite hypocritical, because this is a BBC show on a channel that's quite happy to float out merchandise and everything on all this stuff that causes pollution. In fact, televisions themselves, guess what, cause pollution. I mean, it's not the kind of straightforward pollution you'd think of, but it takes pollution to make televisions, and it takes pollution to build sets to make for the BBC. So for the BBC to sit and put a message on about how pollution is going to wreck the world is incredibly hypocritical, and the BBC should think real hard about themselves before criticising others. And while I think it's an important message, I want to specify this, I do think it's an important message to spread the message of climate change, but this episode does it to the extent where it's more preachy than it is actual episode. I mean, that's my thoughts, really, because it's just, in short, it's just an episode about preaching more than it is about telling a story. But I will give it to Jodie, that scene is very well acted. I mean, it will make a lot of people's eyes roll, but I do think that is, for all the fact that I think the whole episode is focused on this whole aspect about, oh, this is what's going to happen to humanity if we continue down this path. I do think that bit was a nice little scene, and it was quite well written, that bit. I will give it to them. But the fact that they ended with the creature, which is obviously revealed to be a human, all tropes and stuff that's been dealt on Doctor Who so many times at this point. It's obviously a human, and we obviously know that. And it turns out they're breathing out oxygen instead of breathing it in anymore. Like, they've become trees or something, because obviously that's what refills the Doctor's oxygen thing, is the fact that the alien's breathing out oxygen instead of breathing it in. Obviously, I know it's supposed to make you think, and to be honest, if this was one episode in a series that didn't have, or that I didn't know would have episode after episode about political messages, I might have accepted it more. But the fact that it just feels like there's no plot, there's no real thread of plot that lines with the rest of the story. There's a bit at the start where the monster attacks, and that's just, you're thinking, is that the plot? They're just going to run around the hotel while that happens. And it turns out this guy, Benny, this old man, has run off, and then that plot sort of, he dies, and then the old woman sort of sacrifices herself, so that doesn't matter. And then it's the fact there's a massive bomb in the hotel, and they've got to solve that thread. So basically there's 3 threads in this episode that could justify an episode in their own right, but it feels like he's rushing to get so many ideas done that it doesn't really work. It feels disjointed. It just doesn't work for me. I will say this, the monster design for this episode is quite good, and that shot of the monster at the end, although I think it's a bit, this is what we're going to become, and so on, and a bit of a preach moment, but I want to stress this is an important message, to be fair, but I do think there's a good shot of the alien. I think it's a good, well-designed monster. I didn't really notice the score this episode. I noticed it a lot in Spyfall, because obviously the Bond-esque element, and the moment where the master appeared at the end of the cliffhanger for episode 1, I noticed that, obviously, because I mean it's it's just a pretty radical score, but I didn't recognise it. I didn't really think about it in this episode, but I did in those other episodes, so I guess that's marked out for the music. But I think overall, the whole green hair thing, again, with the VFX, it just, why? This whole episode is just, why did you even think this was a good idea? That's what it thinks to me. I struggle to find anything really positive about this episode, except maybe that Jodie speech at the end. But even that has a bit, it just feels like, I mean, I haven't really complained about the political messages on these YouTube channel, really. Mainly because I didn't think it was that important until this episode in particular. But, I mean, when there is just no, I just don't know what to say. It's just driving me crazy. The companions didn't get anything to do. The entire cast is just, I just can't process what I've just watched. I'm going to give it 1 out of 10, because I do think that moment at the end with Jodie Whittaker, although it's a bit eye-roll moment, I think it is important, and it was a good moment. And I did like the way that they did end it with the fact that shoulder monster, I thought was quite haunting. I did think that was quite haunting. And maybe if there had been more of a plot, I would have been more kind to this episode. But there's no plot. There's just no plot. That's the moment. That's the thing. There's no plot. It's incredibly overcrowded. None of it makes sense. And even the directing is probably the best thing about this. I do think the directing is also quite good. But I'm going to give it 1 out of 10 because it really is that bad. It's actually shockingly awful. I would definitely put... I had a feeling going into this episode that this would be one of the worst episodes. I saw the trailer. I wasn't convinced. I was hoping desperately that it would be good. By the end of it, I couldn't cope that it was this bad. I honestly couldn't. It was really shocking. I was really shocked. But, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, we can but hope next week that it will improve. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, although that title doesn't necessarily enthrall me, I think it is... I think the idea of the battle between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison could make for a good episode. So hopefully next week it will be better. But let's just hope this is a one-off, because I'm gonna keep the idea of Spyfall and what that episode represented to me of real change compared to Series 11. I'm gonna keep that in my mind and hope that next week it is better. And who knows, maybe with a couple of rewatches, this episode might turn my head and I might be able to go over just how bad it is, because this episode is the first time inside the episode I was discussing how bad it is. Even in the Saranga conundrum, I wasn't discussing how bad I thought it was whilst the episode was going on. But yeah, Doctor Who continues next Saturday at 7:10, and I'll be back afterwards for my review again as usual. But until then, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe if you want to do that. I would really much appreciate it, and thanks for watching.